what's on your mind. The world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Mindset Monday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to chat about whatever it is we want to chat about. And today, the topic is Black optimism in an era of American apathy. Woo, I know that's a mouthful, but it is a conversation that I often have with folks, especially around the voting season, which we have some big campaigns happening here in Tallahassee and across the country for that matter. And so, we're gonna talk about it. Well, what do Black folks have to be optimistic about? I think a lot of times we are pessimistic. But again, we're gonna dive in. My very special guest is Dr. Nashid Madyun, who is um was in Tallahassee, still in Florida. But I'm so glad to be connected to this brother. He always brings the thought provoking conversation wherever he is. And so I'm super excited and delighted to have him with me. But before I bring him on, I need to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on my personal LinkedIn page. And so we want to hear from you. This is an interactive live, and your questions and comments are welcome. So let us know in the comments what city and state you are tuning in from so we can give you a shout out. Yes, we do shout outs on this show. So I see a few of you on, but no comments as of yet. But y'all know I like to keep this show rolling. So I'm going to go ahead and share some of Dr. Nashid Madyun's bio. He grew up in a small historic town of Helena, Arkansas. The town has a rich cross section of important historical periods: Civil War, African American leadership during Reconstruction, and gospel and blues music heritage. He attended Mississippi Valley State University and Delta State University to obtain undergraduate and graduate degrees in history in Southern New Hampshire University obtained a MFA in creative writing. After working for the Department of Arkansas Heritage, he obtained a doctorate in management, conducting research in nonprofit sustainability and organizational leadership. Dr. Madyun has served as the director of the Stax Museum of American Soul Music, the Texas State History Museum, president and general manager of Gibson Retail Group, a division of Gibson Music Instruments, the Art Museum and Archives of Hampton University, the director of the Carrie Meek and James Eaton Senior Southeastern Regional Black Archives Research Center and Museum at the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, which is where I met him, and now is serving as the executive director of the Florida Humanities Council. Y'all help me welcome Dr. Nashid Madyun.
Hey, how are
Hey,
you? How are
I'm
you?
well, I'm well, I'm well. How you doing?
Doing great, doing great. I really appreciate being able to come on to your show. I'm a fan of some of the topics, and I've been in the chat box asking
Yes,
questions
yes,
and antagonizing people, and
yes.
it's been fun. And I'm happy to be on this side of it to talk about this topic that in some places can be sensitive. So,
It can
um, very, very happy to be here to share some thoughts.
be. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to have you. I see a few folks have joined us. I'm gonna go ahead and shout them out. Miss Jeanette down in Miami Gardens. Thank you for being here. My mom. who is also in Miami Gardens. Thank you for being here. Uh, who is this?
That's my brother Naeem.
Naeem. Appreciate you being on here, brother. Bowie, Maryland. Appreciate you. Alan Williams, the one and only. Where you at today, Alan? You in DC or you in New York? Appreciate you being with us today. I think this is going to be an interesting topic, one that you can give some comments towards. All right, so Nashid, if you don't mind telling us, who are you? I just read your bio, but not what you do, but who are you?
Uh, I'm a I'm an optimist. I'm a father of two. My kids are 21 and 26, so I have the luxury of seeing the differences in generations, and I listen. I talk a lot, but I also know you can't learn unless you shut your mouth. And by trade, I'm an oral historian and the curator with museums, and that's because of curiosity. I grew
Huh?
up in a place where the history classes did not have us in the
Mm,
books. And when I went to college, I realized there were a lot of people who knew more about my historical town and my history than I did.
wow.
And that curiosity led me to move away from a business administration major to pursue history and preservation. And I've loved it. And people who know me tell me that I end up uh, somewhat preaching, I guess, in some circles because I come across stories that need to be shared. My father was a preacher, grandfather was a preacher, my mom's a great thinker, philosopher, my brother's psychologist, and so we're always trying to ponder um, what it is that can make us better, or examine our identity. And I've enjoyed that, and I pride myself on providing a circle around me of people who help me grow. So
Nice.
that's where the positive nature comes from. So
Okay.
that's me.
Very good. Very
Good
good.
question. I wasn't expecting that. So
Ah.
good question.
Yes, yes. Who are you? I love that question. All right. Alan is in New York tonight. All right. Very good. So, listen, this is interactive, y'all. Safe space, a place for us to communicate and exchange thoughts and ideas with one another. Okay. And I know when we talk about Black optimism, it might get a little, folks might get a little in their feelings, but that's okay. We're going to push right on through. So first of all, let's start with this book that you wrote. So
Oh,
I meant to ask you if you even had the book handy today so you can hold it up, but tell us about the title of the book and what kind of inspired you to write it.
well, it's contemporary key to American optimism, and it's about our social contract and the social contract with civic society, our government, and how we live. And it presents a few icons that I go through in a second, but for about a little over a decade, I've had the luxury of switching from teaching U.S. history and African American history to humanities. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for that decade of teaching humanities, I realized there was a little bit more to who we are and how we move than just knowing the history. You need to understand the people and the place. It's a little different than just putting your perspective on something. You need to try to understand where people come from, meet them where they are. That's not easy. And in teaching that, it takes us back to Greco-Roman times, this philosophy of Stoicism, and Marcus Aurelius. I talk about him, and it's a quick, easy read, a book called Meditations that he used. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and reading that and teaching that, I realized that a lot of the things that he shared um, was similar to W.B. Du Bois. And I
Mm.
talked to people and students and friends, and like I've never known anyone to compare W.B. Du Bois, a sociologist, to Marcus Aurelius, a great emperor and leader and thinker, a Stoic. Um, and so I started to go down that path of consciousness. I'm a fan of Lord Acton, that quote about power tends to corrupt. But the last part of that statement is all good men tend to be good men, meaning that you shouldn't have all the power. It needs to be checks and balances.
Mm,
So I take that to the point where we examine where we get our truth and social media and our news and good journalism and how we make decisions. And what you see on TV sometimes, or what you see in society, sometimes reflect what's sensational, but not necessarily true, and
mm,
breeds apathy. And it helps us to ignore, unfortunately, that we've made some strides. Black people, we made some strides, but what's on the news reminds us of how far we have to go. And so, in our 100-year, 80-year lifespan, we sometimes can't see the forest for the trees. And I rounded out with maybe some solutions, but and I wanted to be a quick read, like Souls of Black Folk.
mm-hmm.
Pick that up quickly and share it with a friend. And also Marcus Aurelius' meditations. These quotes about how to focus your cultural and ethical perspective and distinguish between what you can control, what you can't control, and put passion in that. So that's it in a nutshell. I know that's a lot, like I was teaching the class, but that's where it comes from.
Indeed, indeed. And actually, that's kind of what prompted this conversation tonight, because my thought was about Black optimism, um, in what seems to be not just apathy in the Black community, but in American culture,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Especially as it relates to, I think, politics.
Yeah. I think that we forget that this country was uh, it's fortunate or unfortunate, but this country was built off of people who were upset with the status quo, and in Europe, and they stole and created a tapestry of principles and a government that protected the people from the same type of regime. Now,
Mm,
if you don't understand that, or you don't examine what those protections and how that's constructed, then you are subjected to the whims of the people who have the power. And unfortunately, if you're not paying attention, they can have all the power, make all the decisions for you.
mm,
But it's not just at the national level. It's where a pothole is filled and a stop sign, and where the lights on your street are turned because it's facing into your house. Little things like that you have power over, but you can accept it or not. And it also reflects the kitchen table. How people make ends meet.
yep.
The taxes from state to state, taxes aren't the same. State to state, you have abortion, different abortion laws. From
Mm-hmm.
state to state, people have rights. Incarcerated, justice impacted individuals are affected differently from state to state. And
Mm-hmm.
that's because people either vote or don't vote, they understand or don't understand.
True. Let me pause. I see Dr. Eduardo Williams, who's here in Tallahassee, has joined us. Thank you for being here, Dr. Williams. So, um, I guess maybe we should back up just a little bit to talk
Yeah.
a little bit about Black optimism. What kind of is that? Because, yeah, you mentioned like we've made a lot of strides, and we've made a lot of progress, but still in 2024, Black folks are getting killed for what appears to be like no good reason.
Yeah.
Now we have the attack, and it almost seems like the death of DEI, right?
It-
In
it's
education, and it's moving into the business sector. Some might argue, in fact, I don't know if you are aware of, and I really try to stay away from these types of things, but I'm you really are pushing me today. Okay, I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
letting
it
you know,
happens.
because
It
this
happens.
is it's not my wheelhouse. I'm mental health, but Kim Godwin over at ABC News is she resigned, right? So there's an article about, her and some of the things that surrounded her leaving, but somebody texted me and said that the storyline reveals that Kim received a corporate lynching.
Hmm.
Across America, senior and seasoned Black talent is being purged. DEI is dead.
Well, unfortunately, I think that when when people are subjected to horrific situations, the labels fly, and you know we do need to find out everything that has occurred and get all the details before you rush
Indeed.
to judgment.
Indeed.
And with good journalism, we know that um, sensational opportunities hits the front page, and the truth, when it's cleaned up, is probably on page 6 or 7 or 8.
Mhm.
And rushing to judgment has caused wars. It's caused fights in the street, and not saying that that departure was wrong or erroneous or right or justified. It just means that I may have an idea. I may feel that that's wrong. Let me get the facts so that I can communicate to my neighbor.
Mhm.
And there's been plenty of times in society and around this country where conflict has risen. There's been consequences and horrible results, and then the truth comes out. Truth comes out Saturday and Sunday, but all during the week, there's fire and flames, burn baby burn, right?
True.
And so we got to start there. Now, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or purposeful balance, and opportunity, affirmative action, those are buzzwords and dog whistles for the right and left. And sometimes people can take advantage of the fact that someone doesn't know the facts behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and passions run high and people run for the bell. And that's what we need. We need apathy so that I can move my agenda forward.
Yes, I mean, I think that we have seen that it appears at a kind of an all-time high,
Yeah.
especially with certain elections where what seemed like I don't know, a robbing or a stealing of elections, right?
Yeah.
Um, in terms of what we would consider the democratic process.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's
go ahead.
reduce it back to consciousness, a wheelhouse that you're comfortable with, but it's still political.
Mhm.
Before you go to the polls, you need to know who you are, right?
Mm,
And W.W. Du Bois spoke at he presented souls of black folks and double consciousness. I speak about triple consciousness because we have black women, an American, African American, and the gender roles and stratification that goes along with that.
mhm,
Unfortunately, when he published his book and when he was doing a lot of his research, women were fighting and received the right to vote and was still not able to exercise that. And
mhm.
during that time, you still had black codes where African Americans had the right to vote but didn't exercise it. And so you had people voting along a line that they didn't agree with. Now we have the luxury of really examining whether you're independent, Republican, or Democrat, and exactly who you are. This is before you get out of your kitchen, go out the door. You need
Mm.
to know who you are and what your values are, and not because your parents voted a certain way, 25 years of your upbringing, and as well as religion. Whether Methodist, Jewish, or Muslim. Where are your values, who you are, because you're going to have kids and you're going to contribute to society. You're going to be in the workplace and you have seen things, you have a contribution to society, and that contribution needs to be from you, not your surroundings. Sometimes that's tough.
So you make a valid point, which was my very first question to you is who are you, right? So knowing who you are is important before you
Yeah.
walk out the door, before you get to that voting booth to see what your values are, what your morals are, what you believe in. And I think sometimes conversations such as this, or conversations that we have out in the community, may challenge those values, may challenge those our belief systems. And
Yeah, I
s-
think so. I think so. I think it's for some people, I really think it's risky
mhm,
if they're in a tight knit family, and a lot of African American families are very tight knit. Um, and your parents say, "We don't believe," and this is a sensitive topic. We don't believe in abortion under any circumstances. But
mhm,
there are people in that household that say, "Well, in cases of X, Y, Z extreme circumstances, one, we can deal with that, or two, it's not my body to choose." And so,
mm,
whichever way you fall should be up to you. Unfortunately, those personal situations and decisions, that becomes political. So there's a gap there. There's politics, and then there's family. And
mm,
once you know who you are, you can become a proper and uh, an advocate with integrity, right? And someone's watching you. Someone's watching how you move, and
yeah.
they're going to move along with you if they're comfortable.
Indeed. All right, we got quite a few folks that have joined us and a comment. Dr. Tawana House, thank you for being here. She's in Pensacola and was on the show not long ago talking about faith leaders and self-care. Miss Brittany here in Tallahassee, thank you for joining us. My classmate Sharice, who's in Atlanta, happy Monday. Thank you for being here. Ozzy Daniel, a clinician in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Thank you for joining us, Ozzy. And then Dr. House said, you have to know yourself and be true to your beliefs to speak your truth and use the power of your voice.
That's an
Agreed.
obligation.
It is an
That
option.
is an obligation. In Tallahassee specifically, um,
Mm-hmm.
when the enslaved were emancipated, the population number flipped,
Mm,
and just consider any picture you've seen or any scenario where you understand that there were fewer people on the plantation than the people working, right?
mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, rabbits got the gun. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, the population of workers can now vote.
Mm,
So 66% of the population in Tallahassee
mm-hmm.
could vote, but did not vote or voted along the lines of Abraham Lincoln because
He
he
emancipate.
was perceived as the
Mm-hmm.
one who emancipated him, and he did not emancipate him.
Mm,
No one looked at the facts. It was a bait and switch. That's another story. But the truth is, we did not take advantage of that immediately. Now, Reconstruction allowed us to see the opportunities of black legislators, and then that was ripped away with black codes very soon thereafter.
exactly.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where the pessimism comes in as it relates to black folks. Because I just feel like, yes, um, yeah, we're free, and now it's up to us to make lives of our own, right? And Reconstruction, there was now we have blacks in office and that sort of thing, and we see a long gap between Reconstruction to when even here in Florida, black legislators being seated, right? So I just feel like every time we try to make our own strides on our own and do our own thing, it just gets blown up.
How many times? So this the crux of the matter here now.
So
That
I'm playing the
right,
pessimist.
right,
That's
yeah.
not me normally, I'm telling you, but I really do feel strongly about that because it just seems, I mean, we have examples from Rosewood, from Tulsa, Ocoee, a bunch of different scenarios of different events in history where Black folks were away from, you know, the white establishment, living on our own, but here y'all come and burn our stuff down.
You know, if someone told me 22-year-old Nashid, because the majority of the people who were activists during the civil rights movement were young adults, college students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if someone told me at 22, 21, 19 that you're going to make a difference and you need to stand up and let a water hose hit you and dogs bark at you today, Nashid Madyun today at 19, I'm not sure if I would jump out there, but somebody had to do it. See, someone had to say, I'm taking that risk and it's not for me, it's for tomorrow.
Right.
You know, the suffragette movement, Nicole, you vote now, and your family members, women vote now,
Right.
and the truth of the matter, there are a lot of households where the men voted, but not the conscience, their conscience. They voted the conscience of their household, but women couldn't vote, so they had to have a discussion. There
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of leaders that grew because of the women who, as a matter of fact, the Union Bank there in Tallahassee,
Mm-hmm.
when I was running the museum there, Union Bank is still a part of the FAMU museum
Right.
system. And it was also the 19th branch of the Freedmen's Bureau that Frederick Douglass ran. And so it's very historic.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity to put money in the bank came and it was brand new. Did you know the majority of the accounts were opened by women?
Mm-mm. I
Yeah,
did.
so so there, but they couldn't vote.
Mm.
Now you go to the the wars that were fought by 18-year-olds who couldn't vote, and
Mm-hmm.
they were able to vote, right? You have
Right.
the gap between Reconstruction to the 70s where African Americans were not in the offices. Now we've had a black president, black vice president, and we've had legislators across the country. We got Alan Williams on the call today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he has examples where a simple conversation, coffee or tea, or a cookie, or however, at someone's kitchen table
Right.
allowed them to see some differences. But if he didn't decide to do that as opposed to a policeman, he decided to go represent and be a servant leader and go talk to somebody. What are your needs and be a representative? So, it takes that ripple. It takes that first slap at the water to make the wave.
Right. Whew. So, eh, so let's talk about this apathy within the
Yeah.
country. I feel like post Obama things have just
Did we
taken.
breathe?
Did we? I don't know. I feel like I'm still holding my breath.
Yeah, I think people took a deep breath and pumped their chest with pride. People jumped political parties. My grandfather was a longtime Republican. Colin Powell was a longtime Republican. There are a lot of Republicans who were African American. For
MLK was a Republican.
Yeah, W.B. Du Bois was Republican. Thurgood Marshall, all of them, and they voted for a Democratic African American politician that was new because of the opportunity. They were optimistic about what could happen. Now,
Mm.
whether he was able to deliver on what the expectations, that's for another story. But the opportunity was there, and people took advantage of that. Then they exhaled.
Mm-hmm.
They exhaled and said, "We did our part. We didn't, if you were upset with Obama or happy with Obama, you had an opportunity to express your voice there,
Right.
and it was expressed, and you ended up with Donald Trump. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you like Donald Trump or not, there was an opportunity to express that again, and you have Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but apathy is what some of the pollsters rely on. They look to see who's voting, who's not, which way they're voting, and if they care less about some of the issues, then they decide which issues to push.
Mm.
Right. And if we're not paying attention and saying, "Oh, these are the issues they're talking about on the news,"
Mm-hmm.
are they your issues? And then if you don't push your issue, it doesn't hit the ballot
True.
because all politics are local.
All politics are local.
Yes.
And everything is political. So we're about halfway through our talk. For
Yeah.
those of you just joining us, I'm on with Dr. Nashid Madyun. We're talking about Black optimism in an era of American apathy. Talithia Edwards has joined us. She said we were all traditional Republicans. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
Republicans basically are looking at my God, my family, my country or community, right?
Entrepreneurship, stay at my business, you
Mm-hmm.
know, until Lyndon B. Johnson's The Great Society, JFK, majority of African Americans, especially in the South, were Republican. They were farmers. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they were tenant farmers, sharecroppers, and then they owned land.
Yeah.
And they started businesses, started mills. They started trading what they grew, and they started banks. You have
Mm-hmm.
whole communities that had economic development based on African American manpower,
Yeah.
and it happened, and it's still happening. Actually, it's still there, and I do believe that there is a level of embarrassment between Republican versus Democratic in some Black communities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but vote your conscience, and if you need to be an independent, be an independent, but find out what those issues are. But yeah, the caller there was right. Was right. The until the mid 60s, African Americans were Republican.
Mm-hmm. She said it's always on the exhale where we lose ground. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yes,
It's a race.
it
It's a
is.
race. And I'm not advocate. I'm not an advocate for one party or another. As a matter of fact, in the book that I put out, I circulated it. I share the need for a four-party system. We may never get there, but people need to be forced to sit down, just like they do with their taxes, and give some thought about where they are, what's their
Mm-hmm.
status. And that's why I start with Du Bois and go to power,
Right.
because your identity is power. But if you don't know who you are, then your check and your X in that box is not yours. It's someone else. Someone's purchased that.
I don't know if y'all felt that, and I'm talking to the viewers, the way he just said that your identity is power.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you identifying as? And are you fully walking in that power of your identity, whatever it is? Or are you on the fence? Are you lukewarm, if you will? Are you walking in it?
Wow.
That yeah, that's powerful. That
I've
that is
heard people. I've heard people say I'm a woman first, a feminist. I've heard people say I'm a Southern Belle. I've
mhm,
heard people say I'm from New York. I don't subscribe to Southern ideals. Well, what are those? And I've heard people say, "Well, I am evangelist."
evangelical.
Thank
Mhm,
you. And
mhm,
I've heard people say that their religion, their faith, leads them first.
mhm,
Right? I'm black, I'm African American, or there's a rise of LGBTQ politics.
mhm.
There's morality politics. You know, there's a lot to choose from,
It is.
and there's a lot that can be left on the table if you don't give it some thought. You know,
Absolutely.
it's an opportunity. That's where the optimism should come from.
The
It
opportunity.
is the opportunity to have conversations like this, or book clubs and your neighborhood in your at your church.
Indeed,
You know,
indeed. All right, we got Audrey on. She said, "Greetings from another Madyun. Thank you for being here. We
my
appreciate."
mom.
All right, hey Ma. All right, Keisha has joined us. She's here in Tallahassee. Appreciate you being here. So let me go back. Naeem said, "Might there be a level of personal safety or self care to the apathy from engaging in these hostile climates, and optimism works as protection, or am I little of in my thinking?" Hmm,
Well, yeah, spot on, Naeem.
that is spot on.
Yeah, because historically, economic oppression, economic pressure has been a way to subdue the vote.
Mm,
Uh, if we knew that a large population of African Americans in the community were going to vote a certain way, we meaning the White Citizens Council, there was
mm,
an opportunity that to there were direct paths to apply pressure enough so that you're afraid you'll lose your job if you
right,
vote in a certain way.
livelihood.
And so it was pervasive. It was pervasive across the country. And today,
Mm,
if if um, if there are topics that you want to stand for, but a lot of people, there are fewer entrepreneurs out there than people who work for the state or the university or organizations, and you stand up for topics that run afoul of the mainstream and
mhm,
bringing attention, then self preservation may come first. And that's why we do need to look to servant leaders like Alan Williams, who they're running in the space where they can walk independently, because we
mm,
can't all do that. And that brings us back to that concept of the social contract. Basically, we are a mass of people with a great many talents, and
mhm,
not all those talents are the law and representation. Some of us are cobblers, we make shoes. Some of us are dancers and poets
right.
and bakers and seamstress. And we need to be able to be about the business of our craft and feel safe that someone is representing us and representing our ideals. And that's a risk, but someone has that skill. Someone has been called from wherever your faith is, inner faith or, you know, your God, to represent the people. And that's where the social contract dwells.
Absolutely. So, Talithia said loyalty to a party and not our material conditions have contributed to a lot of the widening of gaps like wealth, education, opportunity for entrepreneurship, etc. And then she further said, we, and I mean Black people, are using self care as an excuse to disengage and remain ignorant, which I feel is dangerous to our existences. Ooh, good point.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the next step. If you understand that what your what you identify is your kitchen table, everything that makes your end meet is at risk, then self care is standing up.
Mm-hmm.
Self care is putting your children to work. There was a time where you had to put your children to work and
Mm,
sacrifice their education for periods of time during the year.
yeah.
Self care is going after one job or two jobs or three jobs when you prefer to make music, when you prefer to make art. You can't do that. And
Mm,
so self preservation can cut both ways. But yes, I do think sometimes self preservation can provide cover to those who don't want to take that risk, and that's fine. That's your life.
right.
Those are your 100 years or your 70 summers that you have, and they're yours to own. But if we are looking at how can we change this? I hate the news, and you are frustrated with the outcomes day in and day out, and you're telling your neighbor at the barbershop, the beauty salon, on the front porch that this world is going to XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
how can you complain if you haven't, one, stopped to read actual news, and two and three, tell your grandkids what the truth is?
And then you say actual news. What's that disclaimer?
Yeah.
What is look,
Whoa.
what is actual news?
I think
Because I'm sure many of the news outlets, all of the news outlets feel like they put out actual news.
they know. They know what they're doing and not doing. They know exactly what they're doing. Sensationalism,
Mm,
uh, the um, the metrics of of data of people impressions, how many people are watching, how many people are telling other people to watch.
right.
Social media um, has made a lot of people rich, and that's fine. I think that is impressive. There was a time when we had three channels, three television channels, and because of that, that was, to keep it local. That's why some people chose one brand of cornmeal over vegetable oil or
Cool.
lard or what detergent,
Mhm.
because that's what they saw, and someone said that's the best.
Right.
Lucky Strikes, why you smoke,
Right.
things like that.
Right.
So we got over that hump, and now then you have the cell phones, how
Yeah.
people receive their information. Got over that hump, and now you have people who have no idea what research is and verification and validation, justification,
Mm-hmm.
but now they are journalists because
And,
they can have a following.
and the
Now,
sound bite is the gospel truth. So there you go.
yeah,
All right, we got a lot of comments. Keisha, she said, yes, your identity is power. However, your titles sometimes lose your power in being subjective to the masses. And she further said that there's Democrats and Republicans. We're in a mindset of going stronger than those who believe differently, than going harder in what we believe. Use energy wisely. Uh,
mm,
good point. Ishmael Rents, my family freshman brother who is in Gainesville, he said, knowing yesterday's radical Republican history with the black man makes it always interesting to see today's GOP fight to keep Confederate monuments up and waving rebel flags.
yeah. There's a interesting historical point there. The monuments that we're trying to tear down around the country,
Yeah.
um, they were not built right after the Civil War. They were
Mm.
built in the 20s and 30s. Why? Because of the rise of the black middle class.
Mm.
And we need to remind this emerging black middle class about this quote unquote lost cause, this the way things used to be.
Hmm.
And you know, we are here now.
And
Good
I hate
point.
that.
Good point, Ishmael. We're here now. And so we have black billionaires now. We
Hmm.
have black thinkers and deans and university presidents,
Yeah.
far more than we ever thought could have ever happened,
Yeah.
right?
Then we've
And
had historically.
1887 is FAMU. In the 1880s, doing those land grants and the moral grants around the country,
Right.
there were 5 to 6 universities. There are 108 HBCUs. There's room for optimism in just this 150 years,
Hmm.
but we need to recognize that when that happens, there's inertia. That push is going to have blowback,
Hmm.
and you can sit down and let it hit you and hurt, and you can cry about it, or you can accept that you created this climate and it's a good problem to have to an extent because you've been recognized for your strength and your growth in the community, the power we have.
All right, so I'm gonna be optimistic for one moment.
Yeah.
Uh, and that is because of the shoulders on which we stand. If they hadn't survived, we would not be here. And they had far less than we did. You know, the resources were very scarce. And, they were under some traumatic situations that they had to contend with on a daily.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Your
agreed.
John, your John G. Riley House, the
Yes.
museum there in Tallahassee, like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of museums around the state, um, is a standing example of optimism. In the 1960s, there were only two or three black museums, one of which was Hampton University. That
Mm-hmm.
was 1868, and it was not to the 60s that you had the DuSable Museum in Chicago. After that, if you had to have Black history in a museum, it was in a gallery of an African gallery of a city, general city museum. But
Mm.
now we have Black museum associations. That means there are so many historic houses and museums in the country. We cannot congregate and discuss best practice. And now there's a Smithsonian, one of the 21 museums in Washington D.C. There's a Smithsonian museum dedicated to African American history and
Right.
culture uh, that wasn't here 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dr. Williams said that we must strive to teach what government can do in the process necessary to get what you desire. To
Mhm.
say everything is going to work out if I vote for someone that agrees with me and he said is not realistic, especially if we step back once the election is over. We must remain diligent and stay engaged. Agreed.
It's ownership.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
ownership. I
yeah.
feel like the
Good point.
accountability factor is huge, but we often lose that once electeds get into office. It's like, the memory is so temporal, in terms of what was said or promised or what have you. So,
Yeah, the national waves of politics start with the local ripples.
mm,
If people are discussing um, the access to social media locally, and they're disgusted, and there need to be guardrails, that's going to make its way to the county and the state, and national politics will reflect in some way. Not every time, but that is where the data comes from. The
mhm,
posters go into the communities and they try to get a measure of the pulse. And if you're not in tune with your identity and who you are, you're gonna say what comes first to mind. Well, my parents always voted this way.
mm,
My boss said this. My
yeah,
neighbor, my sister said this. What do you say?
yeah. So, a little tidbit. I have had folks contact me about who am I going to vote for, and they want me to fill out a slip with all of my choices so that they can vote the same way and give it to 10 of their friends so they can vote the same way. And
Hmm.
I was like, you just gonna
Yeah,
give up all you just gonna check your intelligence at the door and just go with whatever I say.
and it
What?
works.
Really? You gonna
People
give me
take
that much influence?
Yeah, people take that slip, and that's power because you people listen to you, but also there are people who take a slip and they say these are the people that you should vote for.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't have time to worry about this. I'm gonna trust that they are making the right decision for me, and I'm gonna check these boxes in that manner.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's and that is
That's
a
dangerous.
measure of apathy. You released some
Mhm.
power, ceded some power to people without verifying and doing some research.
Yeah,
And a lot of people depend on that. That's how that slip occurs.
it does. All right. Naeem said, I think pessimism helps us account for the blind spots from optimism. Maybe they are not necessarily opposite forces.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing's perfect. We're not in a utopia.
Mm,
We're not talking about making things exactly how you see it or how you would like. All your expectations are not going to be met in a reasonable amount of time, but you push forward, and
mm,
those blind spots are going to be those those gaps that you can address immediately. You know, you have 10 issues, and maybe I can push for successfully 4 or 5 this year, and next year I'm gonna work on the other 4 or 5. You know, how do you eat an elephant? You know,
So I think both of you have said something right there, because I feel like sometimes people feel very overwhelmed with it all. It's like there are 50 issues, right?
right?
And so if I don't get all 50, does that mean I throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Mm-mm, no,
So I think it's a matter of prioritizing what's, the most important to of the 50, rank them. And then if you can get half of them, or if you can get 75% of them, great.
right.
You the others, you just have to, hold your breath, exhale. I don't know, whatever you got to do, but you got to work through it, right?
Yeah, I agree. I used to send students to a website, and it used to overwhelm the discussion board in the class. My classes I teach are online, but it's a website isidewith.com,
Mm,
and it is a database of the political issues of all the politicians, whether they're still here or not, right?
mm, mm-hmm,
And I asked them, come back and tell me if it's saying that you are still a Republican,
mm,
and or are you independent? And they say, oh, it says I'm a Bloomberg progressive, you know, and like I'm a Clinton, or I didn't know I was a Mitt Romney Republican, you know, and so it's good to check yourself.
yeah.
It's good to um, be reflexive and look at yourself to see what are my values, and is this politician maintaining or representing me, and did they say they're going to do it, and did they do it? Follow up. You know, they say call your congressman and call your representative. That works. And I've been in some of those offices, and there are people taking notes as to who's calling and what they're saying,
Mm,
because that vote matters. All those votes matter, because
yeah.
that whole office could be cleared out if they go the wrong way.
Mm.
It means something. Everyone.
And if those are the folks of influence that are coming to those offices, because they got 100 people that's gonna vote just like them, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? You definitely want to hear what they have to say.
It works. That partisanship, that face, putting a face on the disgust, putting
Mm,
a face on the opportunity.
yeah.
There is no way the state of Florida could have taken a chance on restoring voting rights to, um, you know, the incarcerated,
Formerly,
and
ex-
yeah, and those who are in some states. There are some Midwestern states. If you were incarcerated and a felon and didn't have your voting right, and you moved to another state, and you were able to get your driver's license and consider voting, if you still had some type of residence in another, you are subjected to um, a penalty.
mm,
You know, so the progress that Florida has made, even though you have a climate of no change. Now there's been some pullback on that, but during that season, there
mm,
was some progress made, even though we thought it would never happen. That Proposition 4. So,
yeah.
um, and that's because people put their souls on the ground.
Hmm. We got Mr. John Brown on. He said, two good people right here. Thank you, Brother Brown. Appreciate you being here. Miss
Hey,
Kiosha
man.
joined us. Thank you for being here, Kiosha. She's here in Tallahassee, tardy, but I'll catch the replay. We appreciate that. Ozzy said, keyword, what are your values? A very critical thing to
Mm,
consider. Absolutely.
starting
And
point.
absolutely. And Mama Audrey said that voting slip has been around as long as I can remember. Some folks in my community could not understand the issues and they relied on my great aunt to help them. This was in the 1960s. Yes.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. I think I said it earlier. I think that is, um, apathy adjacent. When you're saying you're voting, you're saying you're engaged. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't waste my vote,
Mm-mm.
but did you?
Right.
Someone t- someone corralled your vote into another pot, and maybe you don't even remember who was on that slip
At all.
or their issues or their values.
You just hope Auntie had it right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it's apathy adjacent. You gotta be fingers in. You gotta get in and make sure what's going on at your kitchen table is the same and is closely reflective of what's going on Capitol Hill.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we are coming close to our time, so I want to give you an opportunity to give some closing remarks and to share how folks can connect with you.
Well, I love discussions via email. Pretty quick to respond. So you can reach out, madyun.nashid@gmail.com. Old school, so I really not on the Instagrams as much, but definitely reach out so we can have these discussions and move forward. But closing thoughts, I would say in your community, wherever you are, you know someone is seeking to make a change. Someone has a pamphlet in their hand and they're saying, this is an issue that means something to me. Maybe it means something to you. Pick the pamphlet up, read it next week, read it next month, but be engaged. Visit the local museums because someone has crafted a story to tell you that was underserved, that was marginalized. And if you're not a patron of the arts in your community, you're not a patron of museums in your community or cultural sites in your community, then those doors are going to shutter and those stories won't be told and that platform will leave. So politics, the social contract, and issues are local. Start there. Start with that ripple and let it wave out.
All right. Y'all heard it right here. Thank you so much, Mr. Brother Nashid, Dr. Madyun. I appreciate you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely for your time. I appreciate it. All right, Coach Merv just joined on. He said, my bad, Nicole just got out of a meeting. I hate missing this great conversation. These comments are great. It's all right, Coach Merv. You can always check out the replay. Miss Jeanette, she said, my AFL-CIO Local 1972 interview candidates, presented the issues, and prepared a ballot for members to take to the polls. Did you feel comfortable with that, Miss Jeanette? I'm just curious about that. Did you feel comfortable with every individual that was bubbled, every issue, every amendment that was on there that they voted yay or nay for? I don't know. Again, I would question about our identity being our power.
Yeah,
And if you identify certain things, Miss Jeanette, I don't know if I would leave that to the AFL-CIO because they probably don't embody everything that you stand for. So,
your vote is very valuable.
mm,
That's why that campaign occurred. That energy would have gone somewhere else. That energy went in that direction because there was value there. There was some gold there.
yeah, yeah. All right, Miss Potter is here. She said good night. Uh, good topic. I don't know if that's what she meant. She said we need more to get ready for November. Well, don't you worry, Miss Potter. We're gonna have some more conversations with Nicole. So you just stay tuned. Ozzy, it was an intriguing conversation tonight. Thank you, Ozzy, for being here and for your input. And she said this country voting system was never intended for everyone to vote. That legacy still lives today. Voter apathy across all demos is not by accident.
Mm, good point.
It's
He's been
heavy.
the sharp brother there.
He is very sharp. Always been sharp.
Yeah.
Always been sharp. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Should be good talk. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, listen. For those of you who are new to the platform, I invite you to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on YouTube. Subscribing and supporting. We need all the support we can get. We are here Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, focused on mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities primarily. But this is Mindset Monday, and we've been talking about mindset all night long, right? For this
Yeah,
whole hour. So get your mind right as you get ready to vote. Get your mind right as you think about who you are. Look, that's the first thing we started with. Who are you? So know who you are before you walk out that door and recognize. I think that's the drop mic comment of the night is your identity is power.
that's
Recognize
right.
the
Yeah,
power that you have within your identity and exercise that power in everything that you do. So yeah, great discussion.
yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
little out my wheelhouse, but it was good. It was good
No,
nonetheless.
it was perfect.
Yes, Keisha, please don't forget to vote in August. My local voters, yes,
Yeah,
everybody here in Tallahassee, look, across the state, across the country, there'll be lots of voting opportunities coming up in the end of the summer as well as in the fall. So definitely read, research,
yeah,
study, you know, listen to the debates and the forums and ask questions. Ask lots and
yeah.
lots of questions.
Be curious.
Lean in.
Good trouble.
Good trouble. Yes. Good trouble. Yes, yes, yes. Y'all, please let's keep this conversation going because we definitely need to be having these types of talks and this type of dialogue in our communities at our kitchen tables as um Dr. Madyun has so graciously pointed out tonight or reminded us tonight. Have these conversations at your kitchen table in your community, at your churches, community centers, within the civic organizations that you are involved in, and within your families and within amongst your friends. All right. All right. Let's see. John Brown, everything is in your wheelhouse. Nicole Everett, you are the expert guy. You are so kind, my brother. I appreciate
Yeah.
you so much. All right, good people. We will see y'all next time. Peace.